Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Roberto Benetello, and I'm the Executive Director of the Business Council for Sustainable Development Malaysia. Welcome to this webinar entitled Future Proofing Your Energy Strategy. This event is brought to you by BCSD Malaysia and co-organized by the British High Commission to Malaysia. I wish to start by thanking IGEM 2020, the organizers, for hosting this event. I also want to thank the distinguished speakers that have agreed to join us today. I will introduce them to you one by one in a few moments. Ladies and gentlemen, the energy transition offers new opportunities for energy users to rethink how they source and consume low carbon energy and how they collaborate with stakeholders across their value chain to benefit from new technologies, business models, and financing mechanisms. The webinar examines how companies are developing and implementing ambitious integrated energy strategies and how collaboration has increased their ability to benefit from additional revenue streams and extended impact across their value chain. Allow me to remind you who we are. BCSD Malaysia is a CEO-led non-profit organization formed by a group of forward-thinking companies committed to creating a sustainable future for business, society, and the environment. We are the global network partner in Malaysia of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, WBCSD. Together with our members, we want to drive system transformation essential to transition to a world where 9 billion people can live well within the planetary boundaries by 2050. At the same time, we strive to make more sustainable business more successful. Like WBCSD, we work with business mostly around 6 main program areas where system transformation is needed. In these areas, we initiate projects with concrete and measurable output. They all take a science-based approach, and they aim for targeted business solutions to scale up business impact. Currently, there are 36 active global projects from WBCSD, but there are hundreds of local projects from the 62 WBCSD global network partners around the world. Organizations like BCSD Malaysia and like the BCSD offices organization that you see in this slide, which are the offices in Southeast Asia. The knowledge generated through global or local projects is used to initiate or replicate projects in some other parts of the world. This approach leverages on our success, and it minimizes wasting time and resources trying to reinvent the wheel. Ladies and gentlemen, the agenda for today includes 7 distinguished speakers that have been selected to tell a compelling story about how business should energy transition, dealing with the challenges, but also taking advantage of the various opportunities. With me today, we have His Excellency Ken O'Flaherty, UK Regional COP26 Ambassador to Asia Pacific and South Asia. The UK is working hard to ensure that COP26 Leaders Summit next year delivers strong climate action. The opportunities for business from Southeast Asia's rapid uptake of renewables over the coming years will be significant. Ambassador O'Flaherty will deliver a keynote address. The other speakers for today, ladies and gentlemen, are Mr. Rutger van der Zanden, Manager of the Energy Section at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development in Geneva. Rutger will tell us about the business benefits of value chain collaboration in the transition to low carbon energy. Dr. Fazrul Rahman bin Zainuddin is the Chief Strategy and Regulatory Officer at the Naga Nasional Berhad. He will tell us about the energy transition in Malaysia. Simon Song, Senior Vice President, Digital Solutions ASEAN and Managing Director of Bosch Malaysia, will illustrate how companies can move to net zero greenhouse gas emissions, and he will tell us how Bosch has done it. Mr. Jason Mariappan, Head of Petronas New Energy, will share with us some insight on how Petronas is pursuing domestic and international renewable market opportunities. Mr. Shamel Ali, Head of Sustainability at Axiata, will talk about the telco industry position, initiatives and drivers on climate change management. And finally, last but definitely not least, Mr. Matthias Barming, CEO of Eve Energy, whose presentation will cover the mechanisms of renewable energy certificates and how they can play a role in corporate energy carbon management. Time allowing, ladies and gentlemen, we should have a Q&A session of 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the presentations. So without further ado, let's give the floor to the speakers. I hope you enjoy the webinar. I hope you find it informative. Please do not hesitate to get in touch with me at BCSD Malaysia through the email that you can see in this slide. Thank you very much and enjoy the webinar.
Good afternoon. My name is Ken O'Flaherty and I have the honour to be the COP26 Regional Ambassador for the Asia Pacific region. I'm pleased to be addressing this webinar, jointly organised by the Business Council for Sustainable Development, Malaysia, in partnership with the British High Commission in Kuala Lumpur. Leaders from across the world will travel to Glasgow in November next year to attend the COP26 Summit on Climate Change. Delivering a successful COP26 summit is a top priority for the UK government. We want the event to mark a clear step forward in global efforts to drive down emissions and tackle the impact of climate change. We are already working hard to engage governments, businesses and societies worldwide to deliver strong climate action between now and November next year. The challenge is clear. Without urgent action, we will not keep climate change to 1.5 or even 2 degrees Celsius. The consequences for populations worldwide will be dire. The International Energy Agency has assessed that in order to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement, the global transition to clean power needs to progress 4 times faster than at present. This is why the energy transition is one of our 5 key campaigns as COP26 presidency and a key focus of our work. The campaign is particularly important in the Asia region given its role as the driver of the global economy and the large pipeline of fossil fuel, and particularly coal, projects across the region. In Asia as elsewhere, governments are working hard today to respond to the ongoing COVID-19 crisis. This inevitably has had some initial impact on their ability to engage on climate change issues. But we now have a once-in-a-generation opportunity. As governments worldwide move to restart growth and boost their economies, they'll be enacting major economic stimulus packages to create jobs and protect livelihoods. The UK strongly supports the message from the UN Secretary-General that governments should take this opportunity to deliver a clean, green and resilient recovery. The economic stimulus packages now being worked up by governments should be targeted towards the green tech and renewables sector. Clean power is already a growth industry. Governments that invest now will be positioning their economies in a booming industrial sector. This will position them at the forefront of the most innovative economies worldwide, whereas failing to take this opportunity will risk them losing competitive advantage. They will also be supporting jobs. Investment in renewables has been shown to deliver substantially more jobs than in the fossil fuel sector. IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, reports that boosting investment in renewables would increase jobs in the sector to 42 million globally by 2050, or 4 times more than today. This investment plan would result in 7 million more jobs economy-wide than under the current trajectory, even before we factor in losses in fossil fuel jobs. Governments across Asia also need to respond to growing concerns from citizens on health. Clean power is good for public health. There are currently more than 800,000 deaths every year globally from the pollution generated by burning coal. Low carbon investment can create savings on healthcare and environmental costs worth 8 times more than the cost of the investments themselves, as a result of fewer negative health and environmental impacts. But important as the arguments on the benefits for growth, employment and health are, there's one even more powerful argument for accelerating the energy transition, one which is now delivering change much faster than most people could have expected or even hoped just a few years ago. That argument is cost. The cost of renewable energy and storage has dramatically fallen over the last few years. Solar and wind are already cheaper than coal power in most countries, and according to independent analysis, in every single ASEAN country, including Malaysia. And these costs will continue to fall. Hydro and solar are already widely deployed in the Southeast Asia region, with biogas and biomass-driven power generation also featuring in many countries. I conducted a virtual visit to Vietnam last month, where I heard about the massive potential for ramping up use of wind power. This progress is already leading to major changes in government policies across Asia. I was pleased to hear Bangladesh's Minister of Power, Energy and Mineral Resources whenever he surprised many commentators by announcing in August that the country would review every single one, except for 3, of their 29 planned coal plants. Vietnamese officials likewise stated in July that their country could cancel at least half of its planned new coal-fired power plants, and a minister has stated that Vietnam will no longer develop new coal projects. I am informed that Malaysia is also looking at their coal-fired fleet. There are prospects of no new coal-fired plants in the immediate term, and plans are afoot to reconsider those that will come to the end of their contracted life in the early 2030s. I know that Malaysia is also keen to grow its installed renewable energy capacity in order to reach 30% of the power mix by 2030. I'm clear that will be a major transition, and I'm sure that it will require major clean energy investments. This is the kind of market signal that the investment world wants and needs to hear. These decisions by governments truly across Asia reflect the fact that coal is simply no longer competitive. Carbon Tracker has assessed that very soon, perhaps as early as 2021 for some countries, it will become cheaper to build new renewable energy facilities than to run existing coal plants. So countries that proceed with plans to build new coal plants run the risk, or indeed, I would say the certainty, of creating stranded assets for the future. It's therefore no surprise that investors are already changing their posture and avoiding new investments in coal. Coal is now a doomed industry. Of course, there are still some who will continue to argue for new coal, despite the evident economic, social and climate arguments to the contrary. But if investors are backing out, then something's clearly changing in the overall finance landscape. Despite moves to boost domestic coal production in India, recent calls for bids have shown distinct lack of interest from investors in pursuing coal projects there. India is instead now a world leader in the renewables sector, with booming investment in solar in particular. The recent lockdown in India saw renewables deliver an unprecedented share in Indian power generation, whereas coal shrank to its lowest levels in living memory. There's also strong support for accelerating progress to renewables from the private sector. In Cambodia, for example, several international companies which currently outsource production to Cambodia wrote to the government underlining that it was important for them to access renewable energy sources, citing pressure from both clients and from shareholders. So the market is already delivering change. We are now working with governments across Asia to accelerate that change. We welcome China's announcement last month that it would move to a carbon neutral economy by 2060. We expect this to accelerate progress on the energy transition both within China and across the Asian region. As China ramps up its domestic adoption of renewables, costs are likely to fall sharply across global markets. We and our partners are now also challenging market distortions which are slowing down the energy transition in some economies worldwide, and we're working with business and civil society to ensure that calls for transparency and citizens' interests are heard. As private capital is moving away from coal, we're also working to build pressure on those governments, notably Japan, South Korea and China, which continue to support new coal projects overseas. We are underlining in our discussions with them that new coal projects are simply not compatible with international Paris commitments, nor are they in the economic interests of the countries which they are purported to be supporting. Such support should end now. There are increasing signs that the countries concerned are aware of the impact of coal support for their international reputation. Japan reviewed its criteria for overseas coal financing in July, and we're continuing to press them to end such financing entirely before November next year. All of this means that there will be a sharp and irreversible move away from coal and towards renewables across Asia in coming years. We are working with multilateral institutions such as the Asian Development Bank and ASEAN to ensure that governments have the support they need to manage this transition. But this is not an area where governments or multilateral development banks will provide everything that is needed. It's very clear that private investment will be essential to deliver the energy demands of growth-intensive Asian economies over the next decade. We expect Asia to continue to drive the global economy in the year ahead, which will mean that renewable energy will continue to be a growth sector across the region. That represents clear opportunities for investors, which I strongly encourage participants at today's event to seize. Finally, I want to say that I would hope that the economic rationale for investment in the renewable sector should stand on its own. Renewable energy is clearly a sector that will deliver strong returns for companies that invest now. But I know that there is also a growing desire from investors themselves to support international action against climate change, which is something that shareholders, clients, and employees increasingly demand. This is why we now see so many companies now committing to ambitious net zero targets and pressing their host governments to accelerate the energy transition. The UK's COP26 presidency is keen to work with business and investors as an integral part of our preparations to ensure that we have a holistic approach to delivering climate action worldwide. We're strong supporters of the Net Zero initiative, and I am of course keen to work with companies and investors as part of my own role across the Asia-Pacific region. So let's keep this discussion going. Events such as this today clearly provide a useful platform for sharing experience and ideas on what works for this region and Malaysia in the energy transition space. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak at this segment of IGEM 2020, and I'd be happy to take some questions and comments later. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here and contribute to the International Green Tech and Eco Products Exhibition and Conference Malaysia. My name is Rutger van der Zanden, and I work in the World Business Council for Sustainable Development's Climate and Energy team. My presentation today will focus on integrated energy strategies. However, before we get going, and considering some people might not be familiar with us, a quick introduction to the WBCSD. So the World Business Council for Sustainable Development was set up following the Rio Earth Summit in 1992, where it became evident that we needed business leaders to really champion sustainability. Today we are a CEO-led member organization of over 200 forward-thinking businesses, and our members cover a wide range of industries from chemicals and utilities to tech and consumer staples. And we're very much a global organization with our members having operations all over the world and being headquartered in over 40 different countries. Most importantly, we are united by a common vision as well as a common belief that sustainability and business success are not only mutually connected but reinforce each other. Within the WBCSD, we focus on 6 system transformations, from circular economy to food and nature, cities and mobility. Today's session, however, falls within our climate and energy program and the energy part of that specifically, where we are working with our members on accelerating the energy transition. So if you look at our energy solutions project, Our vision is to support companies to progress their own energy transition and play a leading role in delivering an affordable, reliable, and net zero carbon energy system. We're doing that through a variety of work streams. Within the bottom half of the circle called Technology Solutions, we work with stakeholders across the value chain to share knowledge, build capacity, and scale new commercial or financing options, within renewable electricity, heat, in hydrogen, to name a few. Within business strategies, i.e. the top half, we have two main work streams. One is targeted at energy suppliers, where we are creating guidance on science-based targets or roadmaps for the inclusion of social development goals. And the other half of the spectrum relates to energy users, where we are working with big consumers to develop integrated energy strategies, which is really the topic of today. So what is an integrated energy strategy? Well, it sets out how to achieve a company's energy-related, financial, and environmental objectives, considering all energy users across your operations and across those in your value chain. So it's a holistic approach to energy management, and it ensures we look at electricity and natural gas or coal, as well as any fuels used, whether on site or for transport. It's also an approach which doesn't just focus on energy use within your operations. Recognizing there is an increasing focus to decarbonize your own operations and those in your value chain. An integrated energy strategy looks at the entire energy or carbon footprint of your products or services, thus considering energy consumption by your customers and your suppliers as well. When talking about the drivers for such an approach, I have just touched on the market expectation that we report on our emissions and those in our scope 3. But the evolving energy system also calls for an integrated approach. Whether it's new technologies or different market designs, the energy transition is allowing large energy users to manage and source their energy fundamentally differently. Lastly, an integrated energy strategy allows us to harness new collaborations, as only if we collaborate both internally across departments and externally across the value chain do we maximize our ability to make use of new technologies, commercial structures, and funding sources. In the remainder of this presentation, I will outline the benefits of such a strategy, the journey to get there, and the 6 key elements or capabilities that every company needs to develop. So we'll start sort of with the typical journey. So a passive consumer is what the vast majority of companies were a couple of decades ago. We sourced our energy predominantly from fossil fuels. There wasn't so much that you could do outside of buying electricity and gas from your supplier. So we didn't hear about long-term goals and visions. And for most industries, it wasn't a subject that was a strategic priority. These days, we have the opportunity to be an active consumer. Not only do we have a comprehensive energy strategy, we actively manage energy efficiency and the introduction of low carbon sourcing to reduce and decarbonize our energy footprint. And as we go through this process, we interact with different suppliers, products, and services. The third stage in this journey, which we're all trying to achieve, is what you can call a prosumer. Here we explore all options that are available to us to reduce our energy consumption and decarbonize our operations, and work with a variety of partners, business models, and funding mechanisms where appropriate. Critically, we explore these options with the value chain and for the value chain, be it our customers, the industrial facility next door, our supply chains, or the landlord who owns our offices or retail spaces. When we talk about benefits, these are myriad for such a strategy. Financially speaking, reducing and decarbonizing your energy use will allow you to manage cost better and explore revenue streams which were henceforth not available, for example, through providing service to the grid or other local off-takers. You also reduce your exposure to energy price volatility and improve your risk position with such a strategy. Environmentally speaking, there are the obvious greenhouse gas emission savings, an improvement in local air and water quality, and the improvements in circularity as a result of, for example, waste utilization. There are also less obvious benefits related to collaborating and innovating with the value chain, or when it comes to brand reputation and investor confidence. So knowing the benefits and the typical journey towards an integrated energy strategy, how do we develop this approach? How do we implement this strategy? How do we build the capabilities necessary to continuously improve our energy and sourcing management? So to that end, we, in collaboration with a couple dozen of our members, have developed a framework outlining 6 elements or capabilities, which together allow for an integrated energy strategy to emerge. Elements range from having a credible vision to having robust data management procedures and effective processes to engage the value chain. I will run through all 6, highlighting best practice. So on visions and targets, it's crucial that you have a clear and ambitious vision, which is articulated and broadly supported by your board. Time-bound and science-based targets are also key, so that you are working off a clear methodology and towards concrete results as opposed to a lofty goal. Making sure that you are using science-based targets, which include your Scope 3 emission, also ensure this element is best in class. Lastly, you want a strong business case that considers strategic, reputational, and risk elements in addition to financial and environmental benefits to underpin your vision. When it comes to energy strategy and governance, getting commitment from executive level management is key. Whether it is aligning the energy strategy with your corporate strategy, assigning responsibilities across the organization, or ensuring that your energy strategy gets the continuous attention that it needs, executive level commitment and well thought out governance structures are key. Internal carbon pricing to steer investment is another element we tend to see in businesses with outstanding governance in place. The third element is data collection and management, where we're looking for effective data management processes using suitably granular data that is collated, analyzed, and utilized within a suitable timeframe. Companies with excellent data management systems collate energy, climate, and operational data and generate actionable insights from this data. They also collate data from suppliers and other stakeholders in the value chain so that they can baseline their performance or make procurement or design choices based on this input from upstream and downstream stakeholders. Within mandatory and voluntary reporting requirements, we can see that these are rapidly evolving. Employees, customers, partners, and investors are all expecting more information on your energy strategy and your carbon emissions. Many organizations can make improvements when it comes to what they report on and how often they report on it. Leading organizations will refer to Wbcsd's ESG Disclosure Handbook or the Reporting Exchange ESG Indicator Library to ensure they understand the needs of various stakeholders and develop useful indicators. The fifth element is called internal and external engagement. Here you should be aiming for an engagement plan that involves stakeholders with a high degree of influence or impact in the implementation of an integrated energy strategy. You also want to make sure that you focus your efforts within the value chain on suppliers, local stakeholders, and customers who have the greatest opportunity to decarbonize. Lastly, I would like to highlight that open communication channels with partners is also key. Having frequent and transparent dialogues with your value chain is key to identify opportunities which can decarbonize both your operations. The last and sixth element revolves around concrete solutions. So whether it concerns energy efficiency projects, renewable assets, power purchase agreements, or investing in natural climate solutions. Companies that score high on this element carry out a comprehensive assessment in collaboration with your value chain of all available options and accordingly apply financial, environmental, and social decision-making criteria. They also prioritize these options based on their net benefits to the company and your value chain, focusing on those that are aligned with your strategic priorities, and also taking into account that you want to focus on the opportunities where there is a clear route to delivery. So I hope that this presentation and this explanation on the 6 key elements inspire you to start building a more holistic, ambitious energy strategy. And I very much encourage you to use our framework. Our dedicated website, for which I copied a link on the slide, provides a lot more detail on the key elements, as well as additional implementation guides, which cover value chain collaboration within energy efficiency and low carbon energy sourcing, and optimum use cases for various renewable energy technologies. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to the Q&A part of this session later on. Thanks again.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Fazlur Rahman. I'm the Chief Strategy and Regulatory Officer in TMB. My job is to develop the strategies for the group, as well as manage the regulatory compliance and interfaces with our stakeholders, particularly our Ministry of Energy and also our regulator, Energy Commission. Firstly, I'd like to thank the organizers, the Business Council for Sustainable Development Malaysia, and the British High Commission of Malaysia as a conference co-organizers for inviting me to this event titled Future-Proofing Your Energy Strategy. This is part of the IGEM conference. I'm delighted to be here to be able to share my topic today as TMB considers energy transition for a better, brighter Malaysia. Now, let me go into a few things first, talking about the context, then I'll cover a little bit about what are the areas that we believe we should focus on. And thirdly, I'd like to cover what are the things that TMB is doing for this energy transition and also for the country. Let's start with where we are today. Now, with any energy discussion, there's always the question of balancing the energy trilemma, which is balancing the need for energy security, environmental sustainability, and social equity. The latter being more focused on affordability and access to energy. This has always been a delicate balance to achieve, but we see that going forward, this will be less so as technology in terms of environmental sustainability starts to become more affordable. Let's look at where we are today in Peninsular Malaysia. For the next decade, up to 2030, we are in a situation where the system has over generation capacity, more capacity than we need. The reserve margins for the next 10 years will range between 30 to 50%, which is significantly higher than the minimum requirement of about 28%. So what this means that we don't need to build more additional conventional capacity over the next 10 years. This means that focus can be given to more renewables. Now, renewables are not considered dependable capacity because it's intermittent. However, the opportunity for renewables is that it is becoming increasingly affordable. As of the last large-scale solar program in LSS3, the cost for renewables or solar has now become cheaper than gas. Today, we are in this pandemic and a global economic crisis. With this crisis, thoughts are around recovering our global economy and national economy in order to become in a better shape post-COVID. So perhaps there's opportunity in crisis as we look at making choices of where we want to invest going forward to recover our respective global and national economies. And we believe that the opportunity here is to shift towards energy transition, towards more sustainable energy sources in order to reshape the nation's economy towards something that is more future-proof. The other benefit of doing so, as we see, if we were to take investments in the generation capacity, investments in RE generation versus conventional generation, we've seen will generate around 2.5 times to 3 times more jobs compared to the conventional. This is something that we believe will benefit the nation a lot more, and therefore builds a strong case for moving towards sustainable energy. Now, what will be the focus areas for Malaysia? We in TMB have done a lot of study in this particular area as part of our strategy, and we see 3 potential areas that Malaysia can focus on. Number 1 is on affordable decarbonization. Number 2 on energy efficiency, and number 3 on electrification of mobility. Firstly, let's talk about affordable decarbonization. Today, solar or RE generation capacity in Malaysia, total RE generation capacity is about 9%, comprising solar, mini hydro, biomass, biogas, and waste to energy. Large-scale hydros make up another 8%, so total about 17%. Solar makes up about 4% of total generation mix, still indicating a lot more potential going forward. Given the solar bid prices, as I mentioned earlier, the LSS3 bid prices have come down significantly from the first solar auction. The first solar auction was around 40 cents. And large-scale solar number 3, the third auction, on average about 20 cents. So about 50% reduction in energy costs from solar. This makes solar very competitive compared to gas, which is currently running at the 23.7 cents per kilowatt hour based on the third quarter prices. So coupled with storage, solar becomes a lot more viable and a lot more interesting, because today solar is still intermittent. It cannot completely replace dependable capacity like gas and coal. But with solar coupled with storage, this will become a viable option. And we see that storage technology, in our projections, in our foresights, we see that it's coming to parity with gas, solar, and storage in about within this decade. The other opportunity for decarbonization for Malaysia, we see that there's opportunity in hydro. Hydro not only is used as a source of energy, but also other functions as well, including energy storage, but also other environmental and social functions such as flood mitigation, clean water supply, and irrigation for agriculture. In order to achieve this affordable decarbonization, also we believe that the grid needs to be modernized. And this will be something that needs to be taken in phases over a period of time over the next few years in order to manage the lumpy investments that's needed. So the grid will need to be invested to manage the intermittency of increased solar, in particular, solutions before storage becomes a lot more viable. Now, moving on to energy efficiency. Today, when we look at our energy use in the country, it is very peaky. Energy use is highest at the middle of the day because of the temperature and a lot of air conditioning use, and therefore energy efficiency to reduce, number one, to reduce the overall consumption, and also to manage the balance between the energy use throughout the day becomes an important opportunity here. So as we reduce the overall peak in demand, we should be able to reduce the overall capacity needed for the system. Yeah. So today, energy consumption, we have a target of 8% electricity savings through energy efficiency by 2025. But we believe this can be done more when you start to include non-electricity energy use as well. Yeah? So there are a huge amount of opportunities there. And if we look at where the energy consumptions are happening, power sector makes up only about 20%, transportation about 40%, and industrial sector another 40% roughly. Yeah? And there are opportunities, we believe, for energy efficiency to happen in transportation and industrial sector. Now, I mentioned earlier about the transportation sector, and this brings me to my third point of where we should be focusing on, electrification of mobility. Yeah. So today, less than 2% of currently vehicles sold are electric vehicles. So what this indicates to us is that there's a huge opportunity for further penetration of electric vehicles for the country, in the country. And as I mentioned earlier, transportation makes up about 42% of the total energy use, yeah, but also contributes to about 24% of the emissions in the energy sector. So a lot of opportunities here to be able to convert some of this into more green-based solutions. And reducing emissions, in order to reduce emissions, electric vehicles provide the best options in the sense that it is more efficient compared to the internal combustion engines. Internal combustion engines makes up about 40% efficiency in terms of energy input and outputs, whereas electric motors run about 90% efficiency. Today, of course, the main concern on electric vehicles is its cost, is whether it's affordable. So we believe globally that cost parity will be reached by the middle of this decade, and for Malaysia by the end of the decade. Therefore, pathway needs to be set for that to happen by 2030. Yeah. So the two options going forward: either we become a technology adopter, meaning that we buy electric vehicles as they reach cost parity, and increase the penetration in the local market, or we look at opportunities of localizing or creating electric vehicle manufacturing opportunities in the country to create job opportunities, GDP impact, and also bring in skills into the country. Now, where does TMB stand in all this? And I think, firstly, TMB is very bullish in terms of the energy landscape shaping in the future. We believe strongly in moving towards the more sustainable energy solutions in Malaysia and internationally. And we'll continue to want to play a big role in doing this. For our business, of course, our business will be along the three pillars of our business, which is generation, the grid, and also the customer. So we are already putting plans in place to be ready for the future of the energy landscape. In generation, we aim to increase focus more on renewable energy in Malaysia and internationally. In Malaysia, we'll be focused on large-scale solar bids and other opportunities as they come by. Overall, we plan to increase our RE capacity to 1.7 gigawatts locally and internationally by 2025. We also will increase our stake in our RE assets in the UK. We have recently commissioned our 2,000 megawatts coal plant in Jima East Power, and we our position, this will be our final greenfield coal plant. We also will be launching other energy transition solutions to allow customers to subscribe to green energy from the grid, and also create marketplace for renewable energy certificates so that generators can sell these green certificates for energy to consumers. In addition to that, we are also pushing forward on rooftop solar through the net energy metering program, and we have about 56 megawatts of rooftop solar in our pipeline. For the grid of the future, or the grid itself, today and as we look ahead, we will continue to invest approximately 7 to 9 billion ringgit per annum in capex to modernize our grid. Not just modernization, but also to meet the supply requirements, the demand requirements, and also to reinforce the system and reliability. And under this initiative, as we continue to gradually invest in the future, it allows our system to cope with greater renewables and decentralization of energy. In addition to this, we will also be pushing forward with the smart meter initiative, the rollout of smart meters across our 9+ million customers. By end of the year, we will expect to reach about 800,000 customers of smart meters installed. And we'll continue to do the rollout in the coming years over the next regulatory periods and beyond. The thing about the grid investments is that a lot of our grid investments involves a local ecosystem. Yeah, we have about 4,500 local vendors, and this is something which we believe, as we continue to invest, and we continue to invest in new technologies in the grid, we are also indirectly spurring the local economy, creating new businesses, new job opportunities, as well as the knock-on GDP impact towards the country. And all of this is moving towards future technologies in line with the energy transition. And this means that the new skill sets, a higher level skill sets is required for the country. And that's something that is positive, I believe. On the customer side, our main focus here on the customer is getting ready for competition and liberalization. Across our customer experience, we are digitalizing our service delivery and solutions. We're coming up with new products and services to offer beyond just the electricity, beyond just the meter, or beyond just the kilowatt hour. Solutions such as the rooftop solar solutions, home energy management solutions, charging infrastructure for electric vehicles, and also some digital solutions as we roll out our national fiberization initiative, in line or in conjunction with the government through its Jendela program. So these are some of the big areas of focus across our business as we reshape our strategy or reimagine TMB towards a sustainable energy landscape. To us, and to summarize for me, I think there are significant 6 game changers that I believe is relevant as we shape our energy landscape and also reshape the country's economy. Just to summarize, earlier we talked about decarbonization, and there's opportunity to build the solar manufacturing hub in Malaysia. Malaysia is now the 3rd largest manufacturer of solar PVs outside of China. There's opportunity for us to take this further, we believe. As we modernize the grid, we will continue to allow an inclusive participation of our ecosystem to participate in these investments that we're making, not just in traditional technologies, but also increasingly more into new technologies for the future. Energy efficiency, I've already spoken about this. A lot more opportunities in managing demand requirements across the peaky consumption throughout the day, and also overall consumption. And if we expand it further to non-electricity use, we're also actually creating new opportunities for retrofits, installers, and equipment suppliers. The electrification of mobility also big opportunity. Today, only less than 2% of sales of vehicles are electric vehicles, and quite clearly there are opportunities here that will also catalyze activities and opportunities around the value chain. Digital goes without saying. We are moving towards a digital economy, and opportunities to reshape our service delivery, the infrastructure from a fiber access to those underserved is something that we believe will also help the economy. And last but not least, the sixth game changer for us is actually reskilling the workforce. For us, it is an important area of concern for Tenaga Nasional. We being a GLC and have a national nation building objectives, we are concerned about the readiness of our employees moving towards a new industry, fourth industrial revolution, and also energy transition solutions. So we're making a lot of efforts to reskill our people through our training centers in ILSAS and many and also which is for training for not just our employees but also our vendors. And also we are opening this up for Malaysians as well, as the need for electrification increases in the coming years. Now, I think just to wrap up, this energy transition will require a significant amount of alignment across all parties, stakeholders, and the general public. And energy literacy becomes a very crucial driving force in this transformation, if you like. And what's important is that we start to create the conversations. We need to work together with industry players, government agencies, academia, civil society, NGOs, etc., to start thinking post-COVID, what are the big decisions that the country has to make and transition to a more future-proof economy. And TMB, we would like to play an active role in all this. With that, thank you very much for your attention.
Hello, everyone. A good day to the participants of Future Proofing Your Energy Strategy Conference, which is being organized by Business Council for Sustainable Development Malaysia, British High Commission of Malaysia, and IGEM, International Green Tech and Eco Products Exhibition and Conference Malaysia. First of all, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Simon Song, the Managing Director of Bosch Malaysia. I'm honored for the opportunity given to present in this conference. Today, I'm going to share with you the approaches and examples that Bosch are taking to achieve carbon neutrality worldwide. Before we jump into our topic today, allow me to share a little bit about Bosch. Our history began in 1886, when Robert Bosch founded the company in Stuttgart, Germany. Today, Bosch Group is a leading global supplier of technology and services. As of 2019, Bosch has roughly 400,000 employees worldwide. We are operating in 60 countries with 440 regional subsidiaries. From sales point of view, Bosch's revenue reached 78 billion euros in the year of 2019, among which 60% is from mobility solutions. Bosch is the world's largest automotive component supplier. The rest, 40% of our business, are from industrial, consumer, and building and energy sectors. Over the past few years, Bosch has also been actively investing in transforming from a hardware-oriented company to a software-driven IoT company. One more interesting fact about Bosch is about our shareholding structure. Until today, we are not a publicly listed company. Instead, a charity foundation, Robert Bosch Foundation, owns 92% of Bosch Group. This non-listing and a charity ownership defined our company's DNA, which is long-term looking and a strong sense of social responsibility. This is highly relevant with our topic today, the carbon neutrality. Now let's jump to our sharing today. When it comes to climate change, we all know that we must take action now. That's why in Bosch, we ask ourselves, why not start in our own backyard? As we have the technology and we are keen on inventing even more connected and more intelligent technology for the future. Let's have a quick glance on some of the interesting facts and figures. According to International Energy Agency, manufacturing accounts for approximately 32% of the global CO2 emission. As it stands, Bosch emits around 3.3 million metric tons of carbon per year. As a matter of fact, Bosch has already reduced around 35% of carbon emissions relative to our value creation in 2007. In Bosch, we are taking carbon emission very seriously. Our CEO, Dr. Volkmar Denner, is a strong believer and a supporter of carbon neutrality activities. Last year, he made a decisive pledge to turn Bosch into a carbon neutral place in its 400 locations worldwide as early as 2020. His favorite quote for this topic is, "When it comes to the climate, words are not enough. We need deeds as well." Now we are already in 2020, and as committed, Bosch will reach our goal to achieve carbon neutrality in 400 sites worldwide. But we will not be satisfied by only turning our operation into carbon neutral. We have bigger goals. We want to shape the climate action by taking a closer look at the carbon footprint, not only in our products, but in our purchased goods, services, and even logistics processes as well. We intend to achieve the goal together with our entire value chain by another 15% reduction by the year 2030. This slide shows how we plan to do it. Scope 1 and 2 refer to our own energy generation and the volume that we are purchasing for manufacturing and administration purposes. The target for Scope 1 and 2 is to achieve the carbon neutrality as of 2020. To ensure this target achievement, Bosch had defined 4 levels of implementation, which I will explain in detail in the subsequent slides. And for Scope 3, which refers to our upstream and downstream value chain, we also set a target. One example for the upstream emission in Bosch is the purchased goods and services, logistics, employees' commute, and business trips. Meanwhile, the examples for downstream emission is the use and the disposal of our products. Eventually, it leads to our ambitious target to reduce these indirect emissions by 15% by the year 2030. Our climate actions target across the entire value chain have had confirmed externally by the Science Based Target Initiative, which is a reputable NGO providing independent assessment of companies' target for reducing emissions by using science-based best practices as reference points. Now, in the following slides, I will share with you some best practice and examples implemented in Bosch to achieve our ambitious carbon neutrality goal. As I briefly shared in previous slides, we in Bosch have defined 4 levels for the implementation of climate goal. The first level is the improvement of energy efficiency at our site. Our aim at Bosch is to save 1.7 terawatt hours worldwide by 2030. Bosch will be investing billions of euros over the next 10 years to promote innovative measures for energy efficiency improvements. The second level is the investment in the new clean power, or well known as renewable energy. Bosch aims to increase the energy generation from renewable sources at our sites by using the photovoltaics and wind from 55 gigawatt hours in 2018 to 400 gigawatt hours by the year 2030, which represents an increase over 700%. At the same time, we also encourage our business partners with the long-term sourcing contracts to install new renewable energy capacities. For instance, in Germany and Mexico, we are already making a substantial contribution to the energy transition in this way. The third lever is the procurement of the green electricity. In a bid to swiftly achieve the carbon neutrality, Bosch is purchasing green electricity from existing solar and wind farms. In Germany, for example, in 2019, we already exclusively purchased the green electricity of 1.8 terawatt hours in total. Finally, the fourth lever is the carbon offsetting for unavoidable CO2 emissions. This measure helps to provide a carbon credit in countries that has limited availability of green electricity. Now let's have a deeper look with some examples on these four levers. To start with, our first lever, improvement of energy efficiency. Monitoring the energy flows and emission is a very complex task, but at the same time, very important to maximize the energy utilization. This is why, in Bosch, we are using digital solutions for greater energy efficiency. This picture depicts the energy management platform in action. It is a key technology to combat the climate change, as it is connected, intelligent, and has self-learning functionalities. Energy management platform can track, can control, and optimize each individual machine's power consumption. At Bosch, more than 80 sites are using our energy management platform. It is also being used for technical solutions, including ventilation of manufacturing shops, utilization of waste heat from various machining processes, and a smart consumption management for machinery. This has spared the world around 5,000 metric tons of CO2 in the past 2 years, and more than 23,000 tons since 2007. In 2018, Bosch launched around 500 energy efficiency projects worldwide, and followed by another 1,000 projects in 2019. The implementation of this total 1,500 projects helps to reduce 210 gigawatt hours of energy consumptions. By 2030, Bosch aims to save 1.7 terawatt hours of energy with the upcoming measures for an even better efficiency improvement. Moving on to our second lever, new clean power, in a layman's term, renewable energy. We have multiple projects running around the world. Here, I just quote two examples. In Mexico, Bosch is using wind energy generated from the Dominica wind farm to cover more than 80% of the energy requirements in all Bosch locations in Mexico. By doing so, Bosch Mexico saves around 50,000 metric tons of CO2 with this renewable energy switch. And coming closer to Southeast Asia, at our Malaysian plant in Penang, photovoltaic solar panels are being used on the rooftop of the buildings with a peak capacity of 3 megawatt. With this measure, around 3,000 tons of CO2 per annum is being avoided. This is equivalent to emission of 700 cars annually, or equivalent to the emission of 1,300 households' consumption annually. Bosch's third lever is the procurement of the green electricity. In order to implement carbon neutrality quickly, in addition to the self-generated renewable energy investments. Bosch is also purchasing green electricity from existing wind and solar farms. From 2019, we began to significantly expand our purchase volume of electricity from renewable sources, with corresponding guarantees of origin. In Germany, for example, in 2019, we already exclusively purchased the green electricity of 1,831 gigawatts in total. In the Nordic regions, as of January 1st, 2020, all our entities in Sweden use only 100% green electricity from hydropower. Locations in Denmark, Finland, and Latvia are also using 100% green electricity. Finally, we have our fourth lever, which is carbon offsetting approach. Typically, carbon offsetting is a compensation approach. Just to give you an example for a better understanding, the Bosch location at Renningen in Germany has been carbon neutral since January 2019. This building is using natural gas for its heating system, which emits carbon. But we are able to fully compensate the carbon footprint by buying the green electricity to cover its power needs. On top of it, we have 460 photovoltaic modules installed on the rooftop of the buildings to generate electricity, are to be gradually scaled back by 2030, and Bosch is stepping up investments in renewable energies and energy efficiency to this end. Now, this brings me to the end of my presentation for today. I believe by now, all the participants have the insights on how Bosch is contributing to the control of climate change and some measures we put into action. It is everybody's responsibility when it comes to environmental topics. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy your virtual conference. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, participants and delegates of IGEM. I'm Jay Mariappan. I head Petronas New Energy, and I'm here for this session on future-proofing your energy strategy, which is organised by BCSD and the British High Commission of Malaysia. So starting out, there are many calls for a low carbon economy and decarbonised world. And this has been a theme of the last IGEM, but has probably intensified over the last 6 to 12 months. This includes the policies for climate change with the Paris Agreement. This includes the lower cost of renewable technology and maturity, particularly for solar and wind. And now we see increased world demand for renewables increasing at a rapid pace. Also technology advancement. These are the enablers for this low carbon economy. Things like energy storage that can help the intermittency of renewables, artificial intelligence that can help with the optimization of all of these inputs, and things like blockchain, which can help with the integrity of the system. Added to this is the pressures from shareholders at many of the large companies and advocacy groups that are all making companies, holding them to account for climate change actions and sustainability. This has increased corporate participation in low carbon economy, including energy players. And all the oil and gas majors have now elevated low carbon ambitions as part of their company's strategy. For Petronas, we've ventured into renewable energy as part of our three-pronged strategy that started a few years ago. The three-pronged strategy is firstly maximizing cash generators. This is really squeezing out the efficiency in our core business. Then secondly, expanding the core business so that we can grow. And then thirdly, stepping out into new business areas where we will develop capabilities and new revenue streams. And these 2 step outs that we've started to date are specialty chemicals and new energy. Now, last year in April, Petronas established a new statement of purpose. This is a progressive energy and solutions partner enriching lives for a sustainable future. And this incorporates our commitment to the 7 UNDP Sustainable Development Goals, as well as leaping forward with our new energy business. In terms of where new energy fits within to the Petronas Group, also in April last year, the Gas and New Energy Division was established as our one-stop centre for cleaner energy. Gas and New Energy includes the LNG assets, the LNG marketing and trading business, the gas and power business, as well as new energy. All of these solutions that we develop under this business will help us cope with the energy transition and offer solutions to our customers. Now, this is not the first venture that Petronas has made in renewables. Back in 2010, 2011, the company started in solar. It established one of the first feed-in tariff projects in Malaysia, which is a 10 megawatt project in Gebeng. It's also had a number of rooftop projects that have been developed, including a large array at Surya KLCC near the headquarters, and on some petrol stations, including a 190 kilowatt array at Petronas Solaris. And even in Italy, in our international operations, we also have an array. But really now, with the establishment of new energy, we want to take this forward as a business. The technology has come down in terms of cost and maturity, and we see this being a key contributor to the Petronas revenues in the future. Today, we're an established renewable energy player with a large portfolio of distributed assets. When we launched new energy within the Gas and New Energy Division last year, we also made our first acquisition, which was Amplus Energy Solutions in Singapore. It's a Singapore-based company, which has the majority of its distributed energy assets in India. So today, we have nearly 800 plus assets spread over multiple locations around India. We have over 300 dedicated professionals and over 400 projects, all with high credit worthy commercial and industrial customers. The likes of Amazon, Yamaha, ABB, GE, and others. In addition to what we're doing with our Amplus Energy Solutions business, we're also developing further in the utility solar space and the onshore and offshore wind space. These we are developing in places where there is good wind resource, other areas of Asia, and we will announce ventures as we move forward with these projects and partnerships. In terms of the projects that we have operating currently, we have one of the largest open access projects in India, which is a 175 megawatt project where electricity is wheeled from this large ground mounted project back to customers through the distribution network. And these are a number of commercial and industrial customers. We have one of the largest rooftop projects with Yamaha in India, which is a 6 megawatt project. And also we have other projects, including an off-grid project with the Forest Office in Nagpur in Maharashtra, India. In Malaysia, what we're offering to the market is our brand, which is called M+ by Petronas. This was launched at IGEM last year in October 2019, when we could have the conference, which was physical, and we had a very good launch, which was attended by our Prime Minister at the time and a number of VIPs. We've launched this as a customized solar solutions for on-site solar, off-site solar, battery storage and hybrid solutions, and an energy and data monitoring solution system, which we call Hawk AI. This is really a zero capex model for the customers, so they do not have to pay anything up front. The end-to-end solution is provided by M+ by Petronas, including guaranteed savings from day one. So there is no financial risk to the customer. The technical risk is taken care of, and all operations and maintenance is taken care of. So it really gives the customer peace of mind. Now, we launched this in October last year, and the first project that we have announced is Malaysia's largest PPA, which is the development of rooftop solar at 15 of the supermarket stores of Tesco around Peninsular Malaysia. These projects are currently under construction, with some of the first projects being operating later this month. And we are also developing a number of other projects which will start construction this year, where we are helping Petronas meet its own energy needs with zero carbon solutions. So Petronas has really established this new business to be a key contributor going forward. It helps us future-proof the company against very volatile energy prices, such as the ones we see in oil and gas at the moment. It's we're providing solutions for customers, which is very much in line with our statement of purpose. And for our Malaysian market, we offer this zero capex customer solution, which at the moment is mostly solar, but will include hybrid solutions, including storage. And in order for us to grow this business, we really need partners. So partnerships will be extremely important. So let's collaborate, let's partner, and let's find solutions to a low carbon economy. Thank you very much.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for your time. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Business Council for Sustainable Development Malaysia, and also the British High Commission of Malaysia for inviting me to present today, and also to IGEM for hosting the event, Future-Proofing Your Energy Strategy. Before I proceed with my presentation, just a bit of a background on myself. Currently, I'm the head of sustainability at Axiata. I have over 15 plus years experience as a sustainability practitioner in various roles and functions, including advisory consultancy and also as head of sustainability. My main area of interest and focus lies in the development and integration of sustainability strategy, aligning to the broader business goals and objectives with respect to creating further value for the organization. If I may now proceed with my presentation slides. So my presentation focuses on the telco industry and also its position with respect to climate change management. Addressing climate change and its effects is obviously one of the most major concerns that the world is facing today. And it's an issue for which global bodies, national governments, and also the private sector must take a responsibility and show leadership in. For the mobile sector, it was one of the first sectors to actually commit to achieving the UN SDGs, which calls for serious action to regulate carbon emissions and to promote developments in renewable energy. mobile connectivity can also play a significant role in enabling organizations and individuals to become more efficient, and also in terms of reducing their GHG emissions. So my presentation will focus on the telco industry position, and also some of the initiatives and drivers that's driving climate change management, and also some examples of the best practices and learnings from the industry, including future outlook with regards to the net zero carbon objective. Today, mobile connects more than 5 billion people, and that's around 2/3 of the global population. The mobile industry obviously has a significant role to play in terms of addressing the challenge of climate change. It's committed to not only reducing its own emissions, but also contributes greatly in terms of combating climate change through emission reductions, through reducing emissions of the wider industries through smart connected technologies, and also behavior change. The mobile sector also is taking a collaborative action to be fully transparent about the industry's own climate emissions, and they've actually developed an industry-wide climate action roadmap to achieve net zero GHG emissions by 2050, aligning to the Paris Climate Agreement. The new science-based target for the mobile sector is actually a collaboration between the ITU, which is the International Telecommunications Union, and then locally GESI, GSMA, and SBTI to develop a sector-specific decarbonization pathway that allows ICT companies to set targets in line with the latest climate science. It includes emission reduction trajectories for mobile, fixed, and also data center operators to meet the ambitious Paris Agreement goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees. Essentially, this roadmap is designed to substantially reduce the risk and effects of climate change. While the mobile industry is taking meaningful steps to reduce its own emissions, it's also having an even larger effect in terms of supporting other sectors to reduce their own emissions. In this study called the Enablement Effect, which was a study between the GSMA and also Carbon Trust, it was a study to examine the enabling role that the sector has in terms of reducing carbon emissions across the economy. And in this study, it was found that the mobile sector actually assisted in achieving 2,000 million tons of CO2 emissions in 2018 alone across the economy. And also, majority of the avoided emissions are actually from machine-to-machine technologies, which are essentially primarily in buildings, transport, and also the energy sector. Savings in buildings includes energy-efficient buildings, smart meters, smart building management, and then for the transportation sector, there's reduction in emissions through the rise of electric vehicles. Through telematics, there is route optimization for more efficient fuel consumption. And then for the manufacturing sector, there's mobile technology, which has enabled more efficient storage systems, requiring less space at any one time, and also in terms of efficient cooling and lighting. And then there's, of course, the electricity sector, where smart grids are in place in terms of enabling monitoring and regulating electricity demand and transmissions, which then leads to improving coordination and distribution efficiencies. The mobile sector is also an enabler for growth in essential services, and these includes improving education, improving health, and also the purchasing of goods, and also media and news, and also cellular IoT connections. These statistics actually show the growth of mobile enabled services globally, all of which are increasing as users increase, and also the ways in which we work, live, and also develop rely heavily on connectivity. These services and numbers also highlight the fact in which ways mobile is an enabler for positive climate action, where we're able to see the use of the services in different platforms, and also for different purposes and innovative ways in which the services can drive lower emissions, greater energy efficiency, and also more responsible energy consumption and cleaner production. Now to just touch a little bit in terms of the best practices that are out there for the sector. So the mobile telecommunication sector also has demonstrated leadership, and with a focus on investment, innovation, and efficiency, resulting in substantial carbon reductions. Recently, Apple announced that it will be carbon neutral by 2030, and this is actually quite significant as their devices actually form such a significant part of the mobile sector supply chain, which will obviously be of great help in terms of achieving the science-based targets for the sector. And the telecommunication countries that actually integrate sustainability across the organizations have actually strong climate action plans that seek to firstly reduce the environmental footprint of their networks through energy efficient towers that are built with sustainable materials and that are also built with less materials. And also this includes reducing of their emissions through a target-based approach. For example, in many cases, working towards the 2050 net zero carbon objective set by the GSMA. And in some cases, many of these companies are actually achieving their targets way before that. And also, many of these companies are increasing the renewable energy consumed and that are being generated, and also to ensure self-sustainability of towers, and also purchasing less energy from the grid. This is just an example of Telefonica, who are actually one of the most recognized or best practicing companies within the sector in terms of sustainability. Telefonica's climate plan was actually originally aimed to be met by 2050, but this will actually now be achieved by 2030. And this revision actually came as a result of them achieving a 50% reduction in global CO2 emissions in 2019. Since the launch of Telefonica's energy efficiency plan in 2010, they've actually implemented 740 individual projects, which had resulted in about 4,000 gigawatts per hour of energy being saved, resulting in about a savings of 553 million euros. And all this actually led them to fulfill close to 1.3 million tons of CO2 emissions reduction equivalent within that period. Now I'll just touch a little bit in terms of Axiata's climate position, where we are now and what we're working towards. So obviously climate change is a material issue for Axiata. It falls within the pillar of environment, and obviously there's the other two pillars of governance and social that we're also looking at. But for environment, climate change is obviously one of our main priorities. We're very much aligned to the Paris Climate Agreement and also the SDGs Goal 13 of climate action, and also the expectations and objective of the GSMA, our industry body, with respect to net zero carbon emissions achievement by 2050. And aside from that, obviously we're cognizant of the various growth and expectations within the country and also regionally and internationally, and also expectations and demands from the various stakeholders, including investors. There's also the index funds that are becoming more matured in terms of their expectations of organizations, and of course the regulators and financial and capital markets as well. So obviously the demand and expectations for organizations, not only within Malaysia, but also regionally, so on and so forth. There's increasing demand in terms of companies taking a more proactive stance in terms of their climate change management and position. This is just a bit of a snapshot in terms of Axiata's position relating to energy consumption and also carbon emissions. We would like to take a more proactive step and approach in terms of managing our carbon emissions, and also in terms of aligning to the industry objective of net zero by 2050. So we're actually in the process of developing a roadmap, which is target driven, also with intermediate milestones over a phased approach. And this is obviously there will be a lot of work that will be involved, and we're certainly starting the process in terms of identifying what can or cannot be done in terms of developing this climate action roadmap. Finally, this is just an example of one of our subsidiaries, E.co, that actually is our telecommunication infrastructure arm. So E.co have actually been committing to reducing their CO2 emissions over the years. So since 2013, they have managed to achieve about 54% of CO2 emissions reduction based on 2013 baseline up until 2019 through various initiatives, which includes solar-powered sites, wind turbines, and also in terms of the building materials that they use for developing their infrastructure. So focusing more on sustainability materials, using less materials, which has obviously led to also reduction in CO2 emissions. And with that, I will end my presentation. Thanks for your attention and your time. I hope that you found it insightful, and also in terms of understanding the telecommunication sector's position in terms of climate change management and how it's also contributing not only the sector, but also in terms of contributing towards the wider economy to, in terms of achieving their carbon emissions reduction as well. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matthias Warming. I'm the CEO of Energy, and I'd like to thank first and foremost the Business Council for Sustainable Development Malaysia and the British High Commission for having me speak at this event. I'm here to talk a little bit about what renewable energy certificates are, or RECs, and how you can use them in your business to reach your renewable energy targets, and what it is we're doing here at Energy to make that process a little bit easier. So, yeah. So this is the grid structure that we all know and that's been around forever. So essentially you have all the different sources of energy, whether it's conventional from coal or gas, from renewables, and it all goes into the grid, and what you get out the other side is essentially just the mix. You don't get to pick and choose which facility supplies the electricity you get out. You just get what comes out of the plug when you flick the switch. What renewable energy certificates allows you to do is to buy a claim on a particular megawatt hour of renewable energy that's produced and sent to the grid, and allows you to claim that for your own use. So essentially it's decoupled from the actual electrons that travel through the grid, but it still allows you as a company to power your business with renewables without having to put in a lot of investment into infrastructure, to building your old solar panels or whatever the case may be. This approach, it has a number of benefits. So first and foremost, for the renewable energy producer, it's very clear cut. It gives you an additional revenue stream. And so that means that the business case overall for renewables becomes better. So by the market forces, we should get a bigger supply of renewable energy. That's the theory anyway. And so, but for the individual producer, besides the additional revenue, it also means a reduced reliance on a single source of revenue. So you're less reliant on subsidies, you're less reliant on the grid operator whose tariffs may change over time. So it gives you this a little bit of a safety valve in that sense. For the buyer, this kind of mechanisms gives you a an opportunity to take action on climate change that's still relevant to the core of your business. So as you all are aware, I'm sure, there's a big difference in reporting when you're talking about things you do with the money you've earned versus how you make your money. It's much more powerful and much more credible to take action on climate change related to where you make your money. And for most businesses, one way or another, electricity is going to be involved in that. So having this very business relevant intervention without a lot of interference. So this is you don't need to shut down your plant to buy RECs in addition to your electricity bill. So it's it has that benefit. On the other hand, it's also a flexible tool. So it scales with your business. If you're growing, you can add RECs to at will to take off your increasing bill, or if you have an active energy efficiency program, for example, so your electricity use is reducing, then it also scales down with you, so you don't have to make these long-term commitments like long-term PPAs or your own infrastructure to do it. And this allows you to make firm commitments for the longer term, having this assurance that you can hit your target through this flexible mechanism. For government, this has the benefit that it doesn't cost taxpayer money. There's no direct cost to government because this is business to business. While it still contributes to the national renewable energy goals, as we talked about before, improving the business case overall leads to more renewable energy. Like, that's very basic economics, and having that beyond what can be done with subsidies, I think is very beneficial. And it also drives local investment, not just in the installations that go up, but also in the rest of the renewable energy ecosystem. So Malaysia is one of the largest solar panel manufacturers, for example. And this gives an additional incentive for local demand for those panels, driving the whole ecosystem. So while this hasn't been around in Malaysia for very long, the mechanism as such is very well established. So it's been around in the US and Europe and Australia for over 20 years. And it is an internationally recognized mechanism in sustainability circles. So there are organizations like the RE100 and the World Resources Institute, which collects pledges from companies that seek to power their businesses entirely by renewables. RE100 has over 210 of the largest companies in the world that have pledged somewhere between 2021 and 2030 to power their business entirely with renewables worldwide. So, so that also means their local divisions will need to do something here, and RECs is one of the things they can do. And so this is a very well-established mechanism for reaching sustainability targets. I'd like to take a look at a couple of ways you can use it in your business itself. So first and foremost, it can be used in combination with your own renewable energy production. So let's say you have a manufacturing facility with a NEM or net energy metering installation, which typically will cover about 75% of the electricity need for that facility. So, well, at the first level, it allows you to to, like RECs can be used to top up so that you can cover that facility 100%, not just the 75% that's covered by the NEM, which gives you a much clearer headline communication. So it's much more powerful to say we power our business 100% with renewable energy, rather than saying, oh, this facility in this location is powered 70% by the solar panels on the roof. So it gives you a much clearer headline in your sustainability reports and your other sustainability communications. But it also allows you to integrate the sites that don't have access to its own renewables. So if you are in rented office space, or if you're in a very densely built up area where renewable energy installations are not feasible for one reason or another, either you can't get roof space because you're in a high rise, or you don't actually own the building, RECs is a flexible tool for you to then integrate those sites into your overarching corporate energy strategy. And the other very useful case, these aren't mutually exclusive, of course. Most companies will have some combination of all interventions, but the other major group would be to combine RECs with energy efficiency initiatives. So basically, because you're adding a premium to your electricity bill, the internal ROI for energy efficiency interventions goes up, because you're adding essentially around 5% to your electricity bill. So for each kilowatt hour you save both what you're paying to TNB, but then you're also paying the 5% you would be paying to for the RECs. So it gives you an increased ROI, and thus it sort of enhances your energy efficiency program and can make projects feasible that otherwise wouldn't be. So you can change your chiller, or your do insulation interventions, whatever it is, and thus improve your overall energy performance. So as I've said a couple of times, while RECs are new, here at Energy, we're trying to do things a little bit differently. The traditional way that RECs are generated and sold is essentially there's a manual audit to ensure that the credits are real, come from real production. That's then noted in a registry, and RECs are then sold bilaterally between a company that has a renewable energy installation and a company that wants to buy it. So this is a limiting process in many ways. Because, well, first of all, it's quite labor intensive, both on the registry side and in the transaction, because the audit itself takes manpower, but it also takes a lot of time for potential buyers and sellers to find each other, to negotiate terms, and typically they're quite long commitments, so that makes it a quite labor-intensive process to negotiate these contracts, meeting with multiple potential buyers and sellers before you find one that suits you. All these kinds of things, it takes quite a bit of time. What we're doing at Energy is that we're building an online platform. The backend is on a distributed ledger and fed by IoT meters at the production sites for the renewable energy installations. this allows us to have to vastly cut down on the manual audit side. So we do annual site audits, but the recs get generated automatically on the blockchain. And so the blockchain allows things to be transferred safely and to maintain the integrity of the credit, even if they're passed around a few stops. We also have the trading front end, which allows buyers and sellers to have access to a bigger marketplace. So that allows for price discovery. It allows companies that may have been scared off from participating in the market at all, allows them access because they have an easy place to go rather than venturing out, finding individual buyers or sellers for them to operate with. The last thing is that we really want to allow rec buyers to tell the stories of the credits they're buying. So make a much stronger link between the specific project and the intervention. So if you're buying, the classic example would be if there's a school that has solar panels on its roof, then you get to tell the story of the place, and we streamline that process on the platform as well. So that's all I had for you right now. I hope there will be a lively discussion at the Q&A. If you have any questions afterwards, or you are interested in exploring how REX could work for your business, please don't hesitate to contact me. My email is here. Thank you again to the Business Council for Sustainable Development Malaysia and the British High Commission for setting up this event for future-proofing your energy strategy. And I look forward to both hearing the other panelists and to have a discussion afterwards. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Roberto Benetello. You saw me at the opening of this webinar. It was 1 hour and 46 minutes ago. I really thank you for being with us and for staying with us for such a long time. I really hope you found the presentations interesting. Right now we have, as promised, a Q&A session that will last until 4:15 this afternoon. It's 4:15 p.m. here in Kuala Lumpur. So I am the Executive Director of the Business Council for Sustainable Development Malaysia. With me today, we have most of the speakers actually that presented during the presentation. Let me just mention who we don't have, unfortunately. We don't have Mr. Simon Song, Senior Vice President from Bosch Malaysia. And unfortunately, we don't have Mr. Sharma J. Ali, Head of Sustainability from Axiata. But we're very happy and privileged to have all the other speakers. Some of them are here in the region. Rutger, for example, is in Europe. Thank you, Rutger, for making special effort to be with us today. We have received some questions, so I don't know if we're going to have time to answer all your questions. We'll try our best. If not, we also have your email address and the text of your questions. I can tell you that the questions will be forwarded to the speakers, and we will try as much as possible to reply to all questions. But in the interest of time, let's start with Ambassador Ken O'Flaherty. I would like to, first of all, thank you for being with us today. You spoke during your presentation about net zero initiative. I would like to know from your point of observation, do you see this happening in Asia and in Southeast Asia from businesses, and what do businesses have to do in order to speed up this move to net zero? Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Absolutely. I think in many cases, I would say that companies are ahead of government. Not in every case, but I can quote several countries across Asia where more businesses have signed up to net zero initiatives than necessarily the government or government entities. I think that reflects pressure from stakeholders, shareholders who are pressing companies to move to support the energy transition and action against climate change. It also just reflects pressure from consumers who want to buy products which have an ethical footprint, and it reflects, of course, the very pressing need for international action on climate change, which many companies recognise on its own merits. I would say the challenges around this often will, of course, vary from country to country. In some places, it will be around access to renewable energy. As I mentioned in Cambodia, international buyers of garments in Cambodia have written to the government asking for greater access to renewable energy to allow them to meet their targets. Access to green finance would be another issue. And of course, market distortions. In some Asian countries, there is a lot of subsidy for coal and for fossil fuels, and there are barriers to using renewable energy, and of course that will make it harder for companies. I think companies can, of course, help change that. Governments tend to listen to business, and they want to encourage growth in the economy. And I think companies which are moving in this area will draw long-term benefits. They will gain first mover advantage and will be better placed for the decade to come.
How is it going? How is the COP26 meeting coming along, Ambassador? Do you see better commitment or improved commitments from countries on the reduction of carbon emissions?
Absolutely. It seems every week we have new announcements from countries worldwide. So in September, we had the announcement by China that it would seek carbon neutrality by 2060. And we saw last week the declaration by India that it will not be replacing coal reactors. It will be replacing them all by renewable energy. And of course, this week, we saw the very welcome announcement by the Malaysian Prime Minister of a green recovery budget. So I think we're seeing movement across Asia. And of course, it's my job to try to encourage that and accelerate that change.
Dr. Fazrul, during your presentation, you made several mentions to coal and the reduction to the reliance on coal. Do you want to be more specific? Is that happening for real here in Malaysia? Do you see that as a big commitment happening in this country? I just want to link this to what the ambassador has just said. I think it's worthwhile. Please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Roberto. And so thank you for having me here in this conference. Well, yes, I did mention that with the Jima East Power 2,000 megawatts coal plant that we just recently commissioned will be the last greenfield power plant, coal power plant that we will build. Now, this is something which TMB has taken a long view in terms of energy choices will be in the future, right? So basically, as we look at the choices for Malaysia, of course, the tricky thing is always balancing the trilemma all the time, yeah? And which is why we actually have quite a high coal penetration as of today. Yeah? But as we look at the technology of the alternative technologies such as renewables, solar photovoltaics in Malaysia, and also in terms of storage, these technologies are continuing to reduce. The cost is continuing to come down, and to a point that we believe that in the long run, these will be a lot more viable compared to what we have today in terms of coal. And we see that while the coal plants that we have today, these are, by the way, PPA arrangements, right? So it's actually power purchase agreements for coal plants about 25 years. Yeah. So basically, the lifetime will be another 25 years for the Jima East Power coal-fired power plant. But at the same time, within the Tenagas or within the Malaysian generation capacity, there are existing coal plants that will continue to run and expire in the next few years, within the next decade or so. Yeah. So as we look at those expiry, then start to see that the reduction of coal generation sources will start to come down in about 10 years' time. Yeah.
And allow me to touch upon briefly what you mentioned during your presentation regarding renewable energies. And you said specifically that right now the cost of gas is around 23 cents per kilowatt hour, if I quote correctly. And right now the cost of solar is around 20 cents per kilowatt hour, but not considering storage. I find this very interesting to see, because you also mentioned that you see storage technology coming along nicely in the next decade and allowing to reach parity, solar plus storage with gas. So what do you think needs to happen from the technology standpoint, from the R&D standpoint, for the storage to be more viable? And also, do you think at some point storage will be also environmentally friendly? So allowing us to use batteries, but also something else to store electricity. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think the march of technology is actually relentless. Yeah? So essentially what we've seen in terms of the reductions of costs for solar photovoltaics have actually been coming down quite significantly. And we also see the similar trends happening with wind technologies, etc., and as well as storage technologies, particularly battery storage. So for us, I think this is something that a trend will continue. This is a trend that we believe will continue. Now the question is, what would make it, accelerate in terms of its economic or cost viability? Now, generally, I think the increased utilization or actually implementation of those technologies actually helps the learning process and improve efficiencies, improve costs and manufacturing costs, and so on and so forth. So that's one. So having a clear kind of pathway with regards to the implementation of certain technologies in a particular market, like for example Malaysia, we can actually learn from those technologies and bring that learning back into the process and reduce overall costs further. Now, the other aspect of cost reduction of these technologies comes in the form of economies of scale. Yeah, driving the size of the deployment of such technologies, not just only at one lumpy moment, but I think continuously. Yeah, continuously having those kind of deployment of, for example, solar PV technologies will also bring down the cost. The third thing that will also help bring down costs is actually bringing in, I guess, in a way, competition. Actually having players actually bid for the processes, bid for these technologies, like what Malaysia has been doing over the past few years with the large-scale solar bidding process, which has actually really resulted in further reduction in costs. And on storage in particular, I see the same kind of trend actually happening for that. Maybe it's a little bit later in terms of coming up to parity. So we see that around the end of the decade or so, the solar and storage will be comparable or competitive to a gas peaker, for example, right? So these are some of the trends that we see thus far. Of course, sometimes we've seen ourselves being surprised by how much faster some of these technologies improve. So I think we're quite positive about that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Fazrul. Let's move to WBCSD. WBCSD has done a tremendous job. The World Business Council for Sustainable Development has been around for 25 years, and over the last 25 years, they have really become the leaders in terms of business sustainability, and especially in this climate and energy space. Actually, Rutger, I came to know a few days ago that you have a new boss, Claire O'Neill, and former Minister of Energy in the UK, and now she's become the director of the the Climate and Energy department section at WBCSD. We are very happy to be, as BCSD Malaysia, affiliated with WBCSD, and we're very happy that WBCSD is now recruiting such high caliber individuals, because it will really help the cause a great deal. But that wasn't the question. The question is, you guys have developed these guidelines on the integrated energy strategy. It's a fabulous theoretical, let's say, framework that needs to be delivered to companies, and it needs to be delivered in a practical way. So do you see obstacles there? Do you see that there are some hurdles that needs to be overcome for companies to understand what you guys mean, moving from theory to practice?
Right, excellent. Yeah, thanks, Roberto. Great question, and thanks for your kind words on our new managing director, Claire. It's indeed great to have her with us. But yeah, talking about the challenges that companies face when they sort of start developing and implementing an integrated energy strategy, I think the main challenge that companies have is the need for collaboration. I think in the presentation, I elaborated on sort of the 6 key elements or capabilities that companies need to develop, as well as the implementation guides that we referenced, or the journey that you have to go through. You know, true collaboration is a prerequisite to develop and implement this integrated energy strategy. And herein lies the key challenge. It means different functions and departments needing to come together, from procurement to sustainability, operations, engineering, legal, executive management, sort of the list goes on. And everyone needs to understand the role that they play, and the role that they can play to change the path and the direction that the company is having, within an energy and sustainability perspective. And on top of that, to become this advanced or leading prosumer, also referenced in the presentation, you need to work with your value chain. So you need to work with your supply chain, with your customers, with other local end users. And you need to open dialogues with them, build relationships. So the collaboration is not just within your company, which is already a challenge for many. It's also with your entire value chain.
Yeah, and that brings us also back to something that was mentioned by Dr. Fazlor, this energy literacy and the readiness of companies to understand what's at stake and what needs to be done for this transition. Allow me to move to Dr. J from Petronas. This is not a question I was planning to ask you immediately, but I will ask you as a second question. But let me ask you, Dr. J, what you think in terms of readiness of companies. I mean, you are now trying to push a new Petronas, a Petronas that not very many people know, but you have great expectations from Petronas New Energy. So do you have, are you facing difficulties right now to educate your clients and your potential clients around the globe on what needs to be done to transition to renewable energy?
Thanks for that question, Roberto. I think it's a good question, but if you hear what some of the discussion has already been from the other participants, the awareness level around the world from customers, companies, and governments is quite high at the moment with regards to the types of technologies that can be utilized within their businesses. It means that you do have to be probably much more customer-centric in the way that you approach this, and that's what we've had to do. That's what we have to do at Petronas. In terms of capabilities, we're also, like a number of oil and gas companies, in the midst of reshaping our portfolio mix at the group level. And this really does require some retooling of the human capital equation. So that's required on our side. it may be required on, on the customer side as well. So I remember back in the day when we used to talk about solar to businesses where it might reduce their energy requirements or their costs. It was always given to, an energy manager who might not be that informed about the new technologies. But now their training level or the people that are in there is so much higher. So I think it is it's an issue, but it's one that's being resolved very quickly.
One of the things that you also mentioned towards the end of your presentation was we're looking for partners, and you stressed very much the need for partnership at this point in time in your strategy. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, and what are the partners that you're currently looking for? I mean, are you thinking about mergers and acquisitions, or are you thinking about partners that will enable you guys to achieve your objectives? If you could elaborate a little bit more on that. Sure. I think partnership has been core to the way that Petronas has developed over the years. It's collaborated with companies in order to exploit the resources within Malaysia and to venture out of the country to the, really the international multilateral business that it is today. When you move then to newer areas, partnerships are key. For one, having complementing capabilities. If we look at areas like offshore wind, for example, we see a lot of partnerships happening across the globe. Partners bringing in that local knowledge as well as the technical capability. And I think that will be very important. So it can come down to sharing of technical capability. It can come down to partnering because of resources that you have, including capital. It can come down to the local knowledge that partners may have. And it can come down to the scale of what the ambition is for various companies today. I just do not think you can do it all on your own. And so the time is really to collaborate, and that's what we really want to pursue. Yeah. We also believe that at BCSD Malaysia level, but also at WBCSD, that collaboration is not happening enough to make the big transformations that are needed. We just received a question for Petronas. It's very, very fast one. How many projects of rooftop has Petronas achieved? So, good question. So we launched the business really last year with the formation of gas. We started that with the acquisition of a company called Energy. Yeah. It currently has a portfolio of around 800 megawatts of solar, which is operating or under construction. Now, these are with over 200 plus customers. There's a lot of projects. And then at IGEM last year, we also launched our M+5 Petronas solution for the Malaysian market. The first of those projects is under construction and just being completed at the moment with Tesco. These are 50 schools that are around Peninsula Malaysia. We've also started construction on a couple of other projects, which include one of the fabrication yards of MMHE in Malaysia, and on the rooftop of one of the universities, which is UTP, also in Malaysia. And we are developing another number of projects. So at the moment, we're around 800 plus megawatts, but we are growing that business as we speak. Do you see, this is a tricky question, do you see the cost of capital going down right now for projects with high ESG impact from your point of observation. This is something that we are really hoping to see big time moving forward, but because you are somehow connected with large projects, do you see that happening? A link between ESG and cost of finance and cost of capital, cost of equity?
Yeah, I think if you see at the moment currently, anyway, at least in the debt markets, there's quite a significant reduction in interest rates, but also coming into the equity side, increasing amount of investors that are now coming in. All of this is converging to bring about some lowering of cost of capital for projects that meet the right criteria. Now, is it being done in a very efficient way? Not yet, but we do see that being growing in the future, so that it can become more efficient and reflect in that cost of capital.
Excellent, thank you. Matthias, sorry for keeping you wait. Energy certificates, another tool in the net zero armamentarium, I would say, another something that is available to companies to achieve net zero. Again, you're here in Malaysia, but what's happening to energy certificates in other parts of the world? I mean, do you see places where there is a major adoption? And looking at that or those examples, what's your prediction? What's going to happen here in Malaysia?
Yeah, so I allude to it a little bit in the presentation, but couldn't give it a lot of attention. But in other parts of the world, this is a very established method of doing things. So the US have 13 different regional schemes for renewable energy certificates. In Europe, it's roughly a 250 million euro a year market. So in Australia, it's used very actively for utility management. It's also used as a way of giving companies tax credits from their for their carbon tax bills. So if they use green electricity, then they get a discount on their carbon tax. And so it's used in many different ways, but even just in the pure kind of sustainability strategy aspect, where we operate at the moment, it's very well established through organizations like the RE100 that acknowledge this as a way of reaching your renewable energy targets. And so it's very new in Malaysia. So TNB started dipping their toes in renewable energy certificates last year. We're coming in now. And so it's very new around here. And so we're having to do quite a bit of legwork, similar to what Jay is talking about with, of course, a lot of companies now know that that climate change is urgent and it's important. But from there to what do I do about it in my daily job, there's still a gap, I feel, at least if you're not in a position to build your own solar panels or have Jay come and install them for you. Like if you're sitting in an office building somewhere where you feel more distant from your energy use, then there's interest in how you can operationalize climate action, but still some education work to do. And so we're trying to do some of that. I know TNB has done quite a bit on that. I'm sure BCSDM will do significant work on that. But
we'll try to facilitate. We're getting to the end of our time slot, guys. Sorry about this. And is there anything urgent that any of you wants to say at this stage. I think we covered pretty much everything with the time that we had available. So I wish to thank you very much for your time. I take this opportunity to apologize for having been on your case too much over the last weeks to get your presentations and the material. But I think the outcome was good, and I'm very happy with what we have delivered. So we'll try to reply to some of the questions that have been unanswered, and we'll do that in the coming days. I think this is what this is it for today. This is what we have time for, and I wish to thank all the attendees at IGEM and those who came to this conference, and I really hope you enjoy the show. And until next time, thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Roberto.
Have a good conference. Thank you.